part, we invited Roberto, Croci, Managing Director of Microsoft for Startups, as our moderator. And we also invited Choi, Director of Content and Strategy of BoomPlay, Rishabh, Lawania, CEO of Weemedia, Cordel Robin Coker, co-founder and CEO of Carry First, and Dr. Sarah, co-founder of Halahai, as our panelist to join in this content panel. Okay, I will leave the time to the moderator and other panelists.
Thank you, Laura. This is awesome. Thank you for inviting me to moderate this awesome panel. My name is Roberto Croci. As you said, I'm the Managing Director for Microsoft for Startups across the Middle East and Africa region. I spent my career in between startups and big technology companies. I've been working in the founding team of an e-commerce startups myself, and also spent a good 10 years at Google working across different geographies, large organizations, as well as startups, helping them grow, but also transform the way they were buying media, maybe also doing content strategy, and become more data-driven, leveraging data insights to invent new business models and monetize content as well. So emerging markets has been home for me since almost 10 years now. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to moderate an awesome panel. And let me start from introducing then our panelists today. So maybe I will ask each of you to spend a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, share your background, and then we will start the conversation. So starting from Phil Choi is the Director of Content and Strategy at BoomPlay. Phil, welcome today. Looking forward to having you joining the conversation.
Thank you, Roberto, and thank you, VSEM and Future Hub for putting together this great panel. So I'm really honored to be able to speak and share my experience on Africa and the content. So my previous experience was in strategy consulting with Ping An. So it's the largest insurer in China, and then now moving into the FinTech field as well. So I've been in BoomPlay for just over 2 years now, overlooking the content and strategy side. So I'm looking forward to sharing, our thoughts on the future trends of Africa and the importance of content in the music industry and entertainment industry.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Phil. Moving to Rishabh, Lawania is the CEO of Weemedia, a content producing, running B2B enterprise and financial information platform. So Rishabh, if you want to introduce yourself for the audience.
Right. Thanks, Roberto. Hey guys, hello from Nairobi. My name is Rishabh. I'm currently building Weemedia. We're a content and a digital product business. We have multiple B2B and B2C, both content and digital products. Personally, about me, I've been in the content business from approximately 5 years, both as a startup founder and a venture capital and angel investors in multiple companies. I've been lucky enough to see an exit in the content business. I was able to sell one of my last startup to one of a Chinese conglomerate who basically has a presence across Southeast Asia. So it's a very, very interesting conversation, very, very interesting panel. Thanks, Roberto, Vincent, and Laura, and I'm looking forward to see how and what do we share about our learnings.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rishabh. Cordel Robin Coker is the co-founder and CEO of Carry First. Carry First is the leading publisher of interactive media, serving the first generation of African smartphone users. So Cordel, over to you for a quick intro.
Thanks a lot, Roberto. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been CEO of Carry First for about 2 years now. We're, I would say, seed stage startup focused for now on publishing mobile games across Africa. We think there's a really big opportunity in the interactive space as more people are getting smartphones, as data connectivity improves, and as digital payments improve as well. My background is I'm originally from Sierra Leone. I grew up in the States, and I spent most of my career in finance and investing. So I've invested across the US, Europe, and Africa in private equity, as well as seed stage venture capital.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much, Cordel. And last but not least, we are really honored to have joining us today Her Excellency Dr. Sara Al-Madani. She's a well-known serial entrepreneur in the field of fashion, F&B, tech, marketing, and more. And in 2014, she was selected by His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al Qasimi as a board member of Sharjah Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She's been so the youngest on the board, and in 2017, she is also selected to be on the board of the UAE SME Council in the Ministry of Economy of Dubai. So we are really, really honored to have with you, Sara, today. If you want to quickly introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. And I think you said it all. I am a serial entrepreneur in so many different fields. Tech is one of the strongest ones. I'm a public speaker, I'm a mother, and yeah, I wear a lot of hats, but I love to multitask and do a lot of things. And recently, since we're going to talk about content and diversity and all that, so recently we launched a company during the pandemic called Halahai, and that company is about creating content that changed people's lives by connecting the fans to the celebrity. So in crisis, there is always opportunity. That's what we say. First, thank you for having me, and I can't wait to share my knowledge with you.
Awesome. This is a beautiful message, Sara, to give to the audience about crisis, but also opportunity, and also what you did of launching a new venture that connects fan celebrities during the pandemic is really an inspiring story, and I'm sure we will dig more into that during the conversation. So let me start. As I'm working with Microsoft now, let me start with a quote from Bill Gates. That is related to content. Our panel is definitely, we are shifting from fintech to content, which is really awesome. Back in January 1996, Bill Gates wrote an essay which was titled "Content is King," and this was published on the Microsoft website. Now, I took here just a little the quote. I have it here. So just to introduce it. So Bill Gates, back in that time, he was saying, "Content is where I expect much of the real money will be made on the internet, just as it was in broadcasting. For the internet to thrive, content providers must be paid for their work. The long-term prospects are good, but I expect a lot of disappointment in the short term as content companies struggle to make money through advertising or subscriptions. It isn't working yet, and it might not for some time." Now, this was back in 1996. So I would start from Phil. You are the director of content and strategy at BoomPlay, and you overlook the company's licensing and investments in audio productions around the world, as well as providing strategic directions to other internal departments. Is content king today?
Okay, so in 1996, right? So that's quite a while ago, almost over 20 years ago. So I think at that stage, the internet was still in its early stages, right, where a lot of people saw the internet as a really a content delivery system. The reason why they went online is what they wanted to consume content. But now there's so much competition in the attention economy. It's not just music for us. There's also games, news, blogs, social media. So now content is still valuable. It's still very, very valuable, but it's still a lot about how the content is delivered to the user now. Talk about two ways. One is the push content method, where content is pushed to the user depending on what they want to engage in. They're seeing advertisements based on the music that they're listening to, or they're being distracted by other things, even though while they're watching a movie. And then there's also pull content. So for us, it's very important in the music industry for pull content, which is how we're using AI for algorithms. So we're discovering what the users are searching for, the previous listening history, and then from using AI and big data, we can then pull that content and place it in front of them as well. So I think for us, content is still king, just about. But it all depends on what kind of content as well. You can't just make content based on trends, because sooner or later that kind of content will die out and expire. So we have to make sure the content is suitable for what the fans want, what the listeners and users are looking for.
Awesome, Phil. And one follow-on question on what you were just saying. How would you, as you're also leading strategy, so from a strategic perspective, how would you advise going after building a strategy around content and linking that to, monetization and making money, as Bill Gates was saying in 1996?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of licensing of music, which is the area we're in, that's more or less, mature market now where people are paying large amounts to license content on board. And whereas, advertising and subscription model now, when Bill Gates said that was a long term, we can see now the market is willing to pay for content on a subscription basis, from Netflix, Spotify, or BoomPlay. And in terms of the content strategy, the first thing I would say is we have to understand the customer. We're making content or creating content for a specific purpose to satisfy, their need. And then once, we have to research the audience as well to say, what the audience wants, how can it be effective? And then another important thing is, often overlooked is we need to measure, have a benchmark of what's successful or what's not successful. So we need to measure the results of how that content is performing. And from that we can see the consumer preference. Have we done a good job? Have we matched their expectations, or have we, fallen below what's expected? Once we've kind of set upon the right route or the right method of doing things, then we can, invest more into that content. We can amplify what we're actually doing.
Awesome. So a deep knowledge of the audience and leveraging data to get those insights is crucial, is critical. Rishabh, moving to you, you are currently building Weemedia, right? As you were saying before, and Weemedia is a content product that is running B2B enterprise financial information platforms. How would you go to start with content?
Sure. So I feel I'd like to, very good question, but I'd like to bring in the topic of not how content, but why content. Today in Africa, what's happening, and this is across sub-Saharan and the northern parts of Africa. Majority of entrepreneurs, VCs and PEs, a lot of them are focused on building more infrastructural values. Companies that are FinTech, companies that are logistics, companies that are last mile, companies that are focused on health tech and edutech. This is pretty much a dire need of the time. But what's happened is, because of this, not many are looking at content as a business. Not many are looking at data as a service, which basically connects content as their main offering. So the bigger question that basically arises is that people need to stop thinking that content is a good to have product. Content and media businesses, these are all need to have products, right? So coming from that, I feel that, so one of the platforms that I run is WeTracker. WeTracker is one of the most read business and startup focused news website. We gather around 2 million people from around the world, especially from US and Europe, and these people are these pretty much are the right people who are looking at figuring out of what's happening in the private business and the financial information base in Africa. So I feel that I know your question is about how do you go about building content. I'm just going to get to that before I talk about how important these products are and how important content as a service to the whole continent is. Another of my product is Africo. Africo is a financial database. It is a market intelligence platform that basically helps corporate VCs, PEs, research firms, and government-funded organizations find information on private companies in Africa. So I just spoke about a B2B, a B2B2C, and another B2B product that we run. The major difference that we're seeing, and I probably feel that many might agree on this, is building content for a B2B audience, you probably already know who your user is. This user is much coming for a no-frill information package that they already know that they want to access this, versus building something for the B2C. Again, the kind of content platforms that we have here, Cordel runs a very, very different organization than what I do, and Phil is focused on BoomPlay, which is pretty much a B2C streaming platform focused on music. So definitions might differ, but for B2C, we personally use one of a platform called Gadgets Africa, which basically is a consumer gadget media platform, which is in Kenya. We feel that our B2C users do not really know what is the kind of information that they're coming for. So we really have to deep dive into a lot of analytics tools, and my social team is always on it that, so we are literally in the click and the page views business with Gadgets Africa. The higher number of clicks and views we get, the higher the amount we get from Samsung and the Apples and the Texans of the world. So I think it's taken us a year, and I feel we finally figured out that we have around 3.5 million people coming from Kenya and Ethiopia and Rwanda, Ghana to Gadgets Africa, and only 5 or 10% of them know what is the kind of content they're looking for. So we had to go really, really diverse when we were writing about B2C, and we actually had to write about from a vacuum cleaner that is being launched by a local brand here in Kenya to a techno smartphone which has some camera capabilities. I mean, this also connects with what the brand wants. So I feel B2B and B2C business building, especially in content, they're two different tangents. I personally support the B2B side of content much more because one, you are actually able to build a lot of value for the businesses who are trying to access you. You may not have, there is not really a high churn that. So I prefer the beat of building content businesses, but again, I just want to take this opportunity in highlighting that more venture lists. I'm have a lot of them right now on this in this conference right now. More VCs and more startups and more entrepreneurs need to start looking at content as a need to have business, and trying to see these business as profitable businesses. So I'm not sure if that answers what you were asking, but I just want to sort of package everything together and then just sort of share my point of view there.
No, it does, Rishabh, and the message you're giving is powerful. Moving from and it's just like the question is shifting not from if to when, right? It's just a need to have, and the companies should think about a strategy around how to go and start with content and use content as part of the way they are communicating to their audience. And also the point you're making about B2B, B2C is really relevant. That's where I would love to loop in Cordel, because Cordel, you're the co-founder of Carry First. As we said before, Carry First is the leading publisher of interactive media that is serving the first generation of Africa's smartphone users. So from a publisher perspective, how are you looking at technology and the internet that is now dominated by the big technology companies as well, like the Google and Facebook of the world? How a publisher can be relevant while having a sustainable business model?
Absolutely. So my focus, our focus is on the interactive side, and we think there's a really interesting opportunity there. On a global basis, and more specifically, we're focused on mobile, because over 90% of internet access in Africa is through the smartphone, and that will probably only increase over time. So when you're looking at trying to build audience and trying to monetize via mobile, you obviously have Google and Apple who dominate the space. And then on the advertising side, you have basically Facebook and Google. So you take those three, and those are the platforms that you have to contend with. And our view is that is basically partnership over competition. So we see the large OEMs like Transgen, we see the big ad platforms, and we see the distribution platforms, Google Play and Apple as partners. And our view is that as a publisher, we want to be basically the bridge between content producers, content owners, and these different distribution channels. And if we want to have basically the competitive advantage in knowing, you know, what's the right content that works for the market, what are the right marketing messages that resonate in the languages, both literally and figuratively, that people on the ground really respond to. And then finally, you know, how do you monetize in a region where, you know, credit card penetration is, you know, charitably somewhere between, you know, 15 and 25%. Mobile money is excellent in Kenya, but we haven't really seen it take off in other regions. And so, look, our view as far as the way to do it is try not to recreate the wheel with regard to marketing. You know, everyone has, not everyone, but most people are engaging in a Facebook property, in a Google property, and leveraging you know, the App Store and Google Play. And really our challenge is around messaging and monetization, and that's where we can build certain, you know, technology and capabilities to be able to scale.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Cordel. And it's really relevant message in terms of, you know, leveraging platforms that exist there to as a vehicle to reach the audience. But the added value you can bring is in connecting and messaging, you know, to this audience in a meaningful way and in a relevant way, which is great. Sarah, I would love to loop into the conversation because you mentioned diversity when you introduced yourself, and the title of this panel is also streaming a diversity of content. So yeah, and this is really important, right? So we have a mix of uniformity, if you want, of culture across the continent, but also diversity of perspectives and diversity of content. So how do you see content is diverse in the region? And what are the main challenges you see when it comes to have inclusive content for women, for example, or for, you know, be truly inclusive when it comes to delivering content?
So basically we're living in the modern content era, right? And if your content is not diverse and inclusive, it has no life. And people cannot resonate and understand what you're trying to produce through your content. So if you want to, like, for example, have an effect on the people who are watching, the consumers or the audience, you need to consider that when a message is diverse and inclusive, it actually affects you and resonates subconsciously and consciously. So this is the modern content era, and people need such kind of content actually out there. People think that content should just be content for the purpose of entertaining people, or as long as there is content, you know, things are going fine. But the quality of the content, the type of the content, the topics that you touch with your content is very important as well. People now are emotionally intelligent. They understand everything. They can read between the lines. They can understand your ethics through your content. We say their third eye is open right now because of the internet and social media. So that's why the quality of content is actually very important. And to me personally, as a leader on a personal level, I believe where there's no diversity, there's no life. It's as simple as that. What diversity and inclusivity brings to the table is a lot. It brings life, it brings ideas, it brings innovation, it brings a lot of things. So whatever we do as content creators or through our business, through our content, we make sure that these two topics, diversity and inclusivity, are actually very important part of our message. Just like the platform I told you about that we launched through the pandemic, Halahai. So Halahai is a platform where you can actually get a personalized message from your favorite celebrity. A lot of the people expect our platform to have A-list celebrities only, you know, but for us, we have A-list celebrities. We have people from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different dreams. We even have people who are influencers who did not make it yet, but they are aspiring dreamers. So we mix them all together because we believe this diversity creates a lot of strength in the community. And it brings out the best of people. When someone who's dreaming is working next to someone who's an A-lister celebrity, they feel like there's a chance for them to be out there. So the impact of diversity is very important on people's, as I mentioned earlier, subconscious and conscious mind. You have to be very careful with the content you create. The information you have to provide has to be useful information, because people do pay attention to these things. It has to be consistent. You can't just create content and disappear. Content, great, amazing content attracts new customers and also retains existing customers to remain loyal to you. And how do I pass my ethics through how do I pass my ethics to the world? It's through my content. My content tells them exactly what we are, who we are, what we do. And that's how loyalty is built and communities are built, basically. And this is what I call the modern content era. So content will not survive if it's not part of the modern content era where it's diverse and inclusive, and it's very important.
This is beautiful message, Sarah, indeed. And I loved when you mentioned the emotional aspect of it, meaning, you know, people usually remembers how you make them feel, right? So content play a big role in that. And I also like how it's this dichotomy that we have long heard about, data and creativity. You know, I love how content is at the crux of that, is in the middle, and it's both the emotional side, but also the science behind it, of course, to deliver that. Thank you for your message. Back to Phil. You know, I'd love to go deeper into what you were sharing with us before, Phil. What BoomPlay is doing to develop the industry in Africa, and what are some of the main barriers you see across the continent when it comes to content distribution?
All right. So for BoomPlay, you know, we started off as a DSP, a digital streaming provider, you know, as a streaming service, providing music. So at the moment we have, you know, a large number of users, around 80 million users across Africa, you know, globally. So, you know, when we try to diversify into other sectors of the value chain, you know, some of the barriers we were facing are from, you know, some of our earlier content providers. So, you know, the labels or the artists that we use to, you know, license their music onto our platform. You know, we can understand that the concerns are because of the size of our user base now and the influence we have in the market. If we branch out into also, you know, being a distributor or an aggregator of licensing, you know, it's going to have an adverse effect onto their business. So, you know, when we try to help to nurture the market and you know, bring up the standards, at the moment, those are kind of the barriers that we're facing at the moment. You know, aside from the regular problems that Africa users are facing, such as, you know, data costs, what we're doing with that is we're working with a lot of telcos, you know, to offer packages and bundles to be, you know, data inclusive. You know, but the telcos, as you know, some others on this panel may know, you know, they're not the easiest to work with. So, you know, and the time it takes to from, you know, the first conversation to actually, you know, implementation can be quite painstaking as well. And then in terms of, you know, content as a whole, the kind of problems we're facing is with actual educational, you know, the knowledge of artists or people in the music industry. I can provide some examples such as, you know, users, if they download the music, they feel that this should be permanently available to them, but actually it's only available during the subscription service. So we get, you know, some negative feedback from them saying they've paid for the subscription and they downloaded the music. So why is this track not available to them when the subscription, you know, expires? So we have to educate them, you know, users in terms of, you know, how the licensing practice works. But, you know, to a normal user, it's quite complex, you know, especially the music industry, the publishing and the sound recording. And then to artists as well. Artists at the moment, they're still providing a lot of the music to illegal blogs, uploading onto SD cards, because they don't know the value that their content has. they don't know how their content can be bringing in revenue for them, because there's so much corruption in terms of the collective parties, a lack of governing and actual implementation of copyright law and in regards to content. So because of that, artists have a lack of faith in the actual system. So we have to work a lot with governing bodies and other music stakeholders to educate artists, educate users, and also educate, we even educate the police force to say, what constitutes infringement of content, copyright law. So then they have that knowledge to be able to act on it. And then another one is for, in terms of language, because Africa is such a large country. Sorry, that's my bad. Large continent with over 55 countries. So it's very difficult because you have to cater for so many different countries, and the importance of localized content is cannot be overemphasized. So that's one of the main problems we have as an application that covers the whole of Africa. We have to localize all our interfaces and push the correct content to the correct people in different countries.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing, Phil. It's a great experience. It's the way you're looking at it. It's basically, it's a more an ecosystem play, right, where the different stakeholders needs to be connected, and that there is a need for education and localization. That, of course, it's really important to make sure you can scale and have this approach to the Africa as a continent. As part of this, so being that it's an ecosystem, right? Rishabh, you've been heading a Chinese micro VC fund investing in content, and you're also a serial entrepreneur. So what's your perspective on the investor side of things? So how are VCs looking at companies that are building content? What are the main barriers or roadblocks if you see in the current business models?
Cool. So a small correction, I am not leading a fund. I was leading a fund 2 years back when I was investing in Southeast Asia. I'll start with the business model part. And again, as I said, that we have a very diverse panel, so this may not apply to all the business models that are out there. But let me speak about content and media and data as a business model. So in the pre-pandemic era, one of the main business models for a lot of media businesses were advertising. Apart from whatever money that they were making out of advertising, be it native, be it the programmatic side of advertising, was a lot of media organizations wanted to get into events. Events was a really good business for a lot of businesses, be it organizing a conference like this, or be it organizing a conference for gadgets or cars or whatever in the tech industry or even the non-tech industry. Apart from that, people were doing a couple of other things, and they will pretty much be able to stay afloat, cash flow positive, and actually make good profits, because media can really be a very, very lean business. Now looking at how media is divided is content, especially companies, media companies which are primarily dealing with content, is that there were a print side of traditional media companies, which were the newspapers, the magazines and all. And then there were the new age media companies like us, which were basically getting everything online. Now, print is dying, and this is pretty much the reality. And this has been happening from the last at least 6-7 years in the other developed markets. But Africa, let's talk about Africa as a whole. And when I say Africa, I am counting the top 5-6 economies. Print was a very, very good business. I personally have spoken to a lot of CEOs who were building and running the national dailies there, and the profits were really, really good. What's happened now that we are going to be entering a post-pandemic era is business models are changing. Advertising is not anymore the new high. So which means, what are the new business models that you're going to explore? One of the first thing that I speak to a lot of publishers, and I speak to a lot of both B2B and B2C content companies, is that people want to now start focusing on subscription, and they want to get a business which was basically a advertising revenue business to a MRR and an ARR business model. People are looking at how can I how can I achieve a loyal audience? And this is happening in Africa. I mean, this is one of the last things that I expected happening in the publisher world so quickly that today when I'm speaking to 7-8 leaders who are running different national dailies, majority of them are exploring subscription as a service model. And I mean, I personally feel that information is broken here, news is broken here, so there is a really big opportunity to build for the next billion. We are talking about the next billion consumers. We are talking about the great African diaspora which is sitting outside, and people still do not have access to good quality of content. I mean, you have the BBCs and the Forbes of the world which are basically sitting outside, and then they're looking at inwards in the economy, but people need to be more on the ground. So I feel there's a very big opportunity, the subscription business model. Apart from that, I feel content as a business model to VC has never been really enticing. If I talk about the African context, I personally do not know one single venture capital investor. I'm not talking about angel investors, but I do not know one single VC investor who's only focused on business that are building in the content domain, be it in the gaming, be it the streaming, the OTTs, or be it the publishing. Majority of entrepreneurs are looking at the investors sitting in the US, Europe, Asia, where else, but there are not really a lot of opportunities available here locally in Africa for entrepreneurs that are dealing in the content space. I feel that one of the main reasons, again, I'm going to talk in my context, which is the media context. One of the main reasons is that investors are thinking that there may not be 50x and 60x returns, but I personally have seen. I mean, one of the companies that I had invested in just a couple of years back. This is a micro blogging platform, more like a UGC platform. They initially began as a freemium content model. They were just acquired for more than $55 million in India. So I feel this is gonna take some time. We are seeing many VCs that focus on content only that they've started to come up, especially in the US and Europe. We need to see more Chinese and more Japanese investors, be active outside their own economies to invest in content businesses. Content as a business model in China is thriving. I personally know so many venture capital investors and so many angel investors who are willing to bet on content startups in Africa. So I feel that just needs to keep up, and content as a business needs to have more mainstream light towards it to just sort of scale up things. I hope that answers the question that you were asking.
Oh, beautifully. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rishabh. And for the sake of time, as we started this panel, I think 15 minutes later, right? So I'm just asking the team, meanwhile, to confirm to me we have still, good to go for other 10, 12 minutes. And meanwhile, I will go to Cordel. Building on what Rishabh just mentioned, and you mentioned before, that from a publisher perspective, you are focused on messaging and monetization. So what do you think publishers across Africa can do to monetize more effectively and build more relevant, engaging content for the audiences? Also, I see, and this is kind of related to these questions, we have a questions also from the audience here in the chat, from Olivia. To the point on localized content, given the huge African diaspora population and many of these people have made huge achievements in the creative industries, do you see users have preferences towards these people, or do they resonate more with things happening around them, like influencers within their local community or neighborhood?
Absolutely. So look, as Rishabh has been saying, investment into the creative industry and in the content industry in Africa has been lacking. And my view is the primary reason is because people domestically and globally believe that it's tough to make money consistently, particularly in the B2C space. It's viewed as a low ARPU market, but our thesis and the data that we've seen indicates that there are a few reasons why that's the case, and that they're scalable. The first is you have to have content that is engaging. If you don't provide things that people want to buy, you can't, sit around and say, why aren't they paying for things? So we believe you have to get, both top tier global games, for example, and market them directly to people on the continent, engage with them, and so on. And to the question from the panelists, we also believe that localization and making things relational and proximal to end users is really important. So leveraging influencers, both in the diaspora as well as locally. We don't actually see a big distinction in the world of social media, whether someone's living in Maine or Lagos. So first is you have to provide things that people want to pay for. The second is you have to provide the means for them to pay for it. And this is where I come back to payments again. The big distribution platforms on mobile are great for access, but they haven't put in the work to provide localized means for people to pay. So the ways that people can pay depend on the geography, right? Nigeria is cash and bank transfer, Kenya's mobile money, South Africa is local cards, and everywhere, if the telcos, I think, were, I would say, more cooperative and nimble, should be direct carrier billing markets, so airtime as money. In order to monetize as a publisher, you need to find a way to provide those local channels for people to pay. And what we found is that when you do, some of them are through sort of new FinTech companies that have popped up around the continent. Some of them through offline and agent networks, which we're working to build and partner with. But when you do, we've seen an uplift of somewhere between 300% and 400% in average revenue per user on a monthly basis. So provide things they want to pay for, and give them the means to pay for it. And with those two things, we think that there's a very viable ecosystem here to monetize content.
This is great. This is awesome. And I will go to Sarah for the next questions, and then probably we will wrap up with the final questions for all the panelists. Sarah, you have been, in one of the youngest board member in the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce, and you've been an entrepreneur by the age of 15. So how would you go about inspiring women in the region to be more active, self-confident, how they can do content marketing to help in the journey and build community?
So I have an honorary PhD in women empowerment. So I've been known in the region to support women and to be like a strong source of inspiration for women, which is something that I'm honored to do. But at the same time, I do hate the word empowerment because I don't feel women are weak. And I've never saw a bunch of men saying, holding hands saying, empower us. So I believe in gender equality, and I believe we are genderless, so therefore we're equal. And I also believe that women and men don't compete with each other, they complete each other. And in my content, when I'm trying to inspire women to, believe in themselves and live their dreams, I always show them these things. My content has these kind of values, that we are equal, that diversity is important, it's good for creativity, it's good for achieving efficiency and all that. It brings a lot to the table. So my content always talks about that. I don't empower women, I inspire women. And I think I've built a community online through my content that supports the same vision. And when you have a community that supports the same vision, you have the base where we share the same ethics, we share the same message, and they're supportive of the message. So the message reaches further than a normal message does because of the community that surrounds that message as well. To be honest, just to tackle like the topic of diversity, I'm creating content right now to talk about why the world is a man's place, okay? And the reason why the world is a man's place is not because it's the fault of the men. Men are not the reason. And we did a lot of research about it to find out, while we were doing research with the government for diversity purposes and all that. And I found out through my research that the reason this world is a man's world is because of women. And I'll explain to you why. Because whenever I sit with women who have children, all I hear the woman telling her daughter is, when you grow up, you're going to find a rich husband. You're going to find a man that works hard. He'll do everything for you. You don't have to do anything. You're just going to sit home. He's going to take care of you. So you're slowly killing something inside of a woman, which is you're making her dependent. You're telling her you're useless in the community. You're useless in this society. And you're just waiting for someone to depend on. And when you raise girls like that, what happens? The world's become a male dominant world. So women are contributing into this diversity problem that's happening, that's not taking place. So I always say that in my content, what I say is that no matter how much content I put online and no matter how much the country speaks about it or the leadership speaks about it, if it's a broken home, then the message will remain broken. So basically my message is diversity is very important and it starts from home. And I'm sure all of us have families. I'm sure all of us have like daughters or sisters and all that. You need to understand that it all starts from home. It's the way you raise your kids. It's the way you teach them about diversity because it's very important. And my content always tells people that you need to start at home. Your kids are basically the generation of the future. And sometimes, you know, it's hard to change people who are old and they've lived in certain cultures and certain mentalities because it's broken. You cannot fix what's broken, but it's always healthy to start with the younger generation. And that's what I'm trying to do through my content. And if we are here to speak about modern content and content that has diversity and it's inclusive, we really need to make our content catered and tailored toward that. What you say defines you. Your content defines you, defines your ethics. And what defines your ethics is what builds your tribe, your loyalty, your community. So this is my feedback when it comes to that. And I aspire to inspire not only women, but men also, because I believe, you know, I see us as genderless. I don't see gender, I see people. And that's what it is to me.
Sarah, this is a beautiful message. I love what you just said. I hope you are recording this because it was beautiful. No, really, no, because actually it resonates. We recently did also some events where we were talking about if it is possible to teach creativity or entrepreneurship as a mindset for younger youth, right, young generation. And it always, the conversation came to a point where, as you said, it's the parents that have expectation for their children or the education system that kills creativity early on. Whereas, content, and I believe content can play a huge role if we consider ahead of time in the strategy that the stakeholders for content are also these people, these institutions and the parents, and it starts early on. So this is a beautiful message. I think, so we have a time, I guess, for a final round of question to all the panelists. I guess I would go easy maybe with the same questions for everyone, so it's easy also to wrap up. We talked a little bit about the challenges that we will or that we are currently facing in Africa when it comes to content and the industry. So now the final questions is more about your message about how we can overcome those challenges according to your experience and your field of operations, right? Starting from you, Phil, we will go around the panelists with your final message on that.
Okay. So for us in the entertainment industry, you know, the distinctions between, you know, print, digital, traditional, or modern media, in gaming, wireless is all like blurring now. So there's a lot of companies that started off, you know, in traditional media who are now moving on to, you know, online media as well. So for us, it's always important to, you know, re-envision every aspect of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So, you know, we have to use the right technology and then keep up to date with the newest technology in order to be able to provide users with the content that they want. It's not about us forcing content onto them and then, you know, saying to them, they have to accept this is what you want. It has to be the other way around. What do the customers want? What do the users want? and then we have to deliver this in a cost-effective manner, because at the end of the day, we are in a business, to make money and to monetize. And also, the pace of innovation now, especially for Africa, they've kind of like jumped from the 3G area, and straight into the deep end. So now, where other parts of the world went from 2G, 3G to 4G, we're seeing a lot of prevalence 3G moving quickly, and then people actually skipping 3G and going straight to 4G. So that's going to cause a huge disruption. And I think the company or the people who succeed will be the ones that will be able to manage that process the best as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. Rishabh, what's next from your side, or your point of view, how to overcome the challenges you mentioned before?
Sure. Thanks. I think I've spoken about this about the VC side of the business, where I feel that all of us as content entrepreneurs, we should start looking at how to make a content business revenue funded, and basically how to make it balance sheet funded. I feel that we as a business, we were just on the verge of closing a pre-A of around almost a $2 million deal, but then it had to happen, and then the deal was called off because of the impending depression. So I feel that this time should have given the entrepreneur, not just the content, but in all the industries, to rethink their business models. And I think it was the time to reflect back upon, why am I really building this? And apart from the value that I'm creating for the society, what do I have in myself? And I think that has to be pretty much the capitalist question. I personally call myself a hippie capitalist. Feel that this was pretty much the time. Look back, and challenges will be more. Content is not an easy business. There is a lot of bleeding that happens. So I think we have personally learned on how to stay lean, and only spend when it is possible, and at the same time keep aggressively looking for more investors who really supports the vision of bridging a big gap in Africa, which is information. So I feel that is pretty much how we are personally. So to answer a question by Olivia, her main question was that, is the African diaspora have preferences towards the people who made it large in the creative industry? It's both yes and no, more or less no, because I feel that everywhere there are more hyperlocal influencers, be it Kenya, be it Nigeria, be it South Africa. So yes, definitely an incline towards the international African diaspora, which has made it big in the creative industry. But yeah, the bigger answer is no. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Cordel, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So look, my one prescription for helping to scale the challenges would be partnership. There is a famous phrase that says, no man is an island. And I think after this conversation, I would change it to say no person is an island, to be more gender inclusive. But I think particularly when you're trying to build up and commercialize an industry and an ecosystem, you can't do everything. And so even this panel, I see in what each of you do different opportunities to collaborate, to share ideas, to potentially actually have commercial partnerships and arrangements. And I think we need to, particularly early stage companies, be more open, more aware, and more aggressive about partnering with other organizations, large and small, to try and advance the industry at large and our own businesses more quickly. And I think there are roles for investors and incubators and organizations like Future Hub, who see a lot more than you do in your individual vertical and can help act as a connector and a conduit. And we've already been the beneficiary of things like that. But I would say that partnership is one of the main ways that I see us really sort of transcending.
Great message, Cordel. I can tell, working for Microsoft, for example, not related to content, but the way the company transformed the way of looking at partnerships and looking at competitors has put the company on a different trajectory. So there is always opportunity if you look how you can build on top of each other's strengths, right? So it's a great advice. And let's close the session now with Sarah. So looking forward to your final message of inspiration and hope when it comes to diversity and content.
So, of course, I touched a lot about it, and I think everything I said was like, in conclusion, how I feel and how I think about it. But I really believe that content is important. Quality content is important. Big companies, brands, the consumers, they understand when content does not have a strong message and is weak. And even companies now, when they engage with celebrities or influencers or anything to create any kind of content, companies are choosing content creators that have a great vision and a great, and they're like role models in their content. So good content is important. Even now, Instagram is removing the likes on Instagram. So we can, they're removing the likes on Instagram so we can focus on good content. So good content is the future. People can see through your content. They can read through your content. If you are a brand, your content is how you market your brand. If you as a person is a brand, how you think and everything. Because each and everyone on this panel is a brand of themselves. So how you portray yourself online through your content is how you market yourself. And what people say about you offline is your branding, basically. So it's so important to really pay attention to the quality of content, to use content the right way. And this is how, as a company, you can thrive, you can acquire new customers and keep and retain existing customers and reach the world, basically, through your message. So my advice is, diversity is key. Where there's no diversity, there's no life. Don't focus on gender. We are genderless, all of us. And just, spread the love and inspire the ones around you. Because to me, the definition of success is what have I done for myself and then what have I done for others. So collaboration and working with others and supporting and creating a supporting system and a community with everybody is very important. It's part of thriving. So, this is my last words towards that.
Awesome, great, beautiful message, Sarah. I love when you said before, you are what you say, because it conveys a message also of content is also reflects who you are and values and your authenticity, and it is a great message. So with that, I would say I would love to thank you, Future Hub, for hosting this event and this session, for having me moderating, but also thank you to Vincent and Laura and Future Hub for all of this. Thank you for the beautiful panel today with Rishabh, Cordel, Phil, and Sarah. Enjoyed very much the conversation. So I will hand over to Laura to move forward with the next panel and the next section in the event.